Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Get your free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/Lutheran Cartographer. The Lutheran Cartographer, Episode 4. All right, welcome to the Lutheran Cartographer. I'm joined today by Brian Yamabe. He is a software developer in California and also one of the on the board of directors of Concordia Portland. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, good deal. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to Lutheranism, and a little bit more about your background?
Sure. I went to a Lutheran K-8 in San Francisco, California. My sister was about to get bused out to a school like in the bad area of town. And so there was like a neighborhood school. And we grew up as Methodists, but there was this neighborhood school, and it was like, oh, well, this seems like a nice school. Let's try that. And so my sister started going there when she was in kindergarten. I went there a couple years later, and we went there K-8, was confirmed, and did the typical thing, well, now typical Lutheran thing, where you kind of just wander off into the wilderness for a little bit, and then my wife and I. We had our first daughter, and we started, I wanted to go get back into church, and we went to a couple different churches, and they never felt right. And then it was actually the historic liturgy that brought me back to a Lutheran church, and also listening to issues, etc. And so it's like, this is the right teaching, this is the right order of service. And so we've been at our current church, Shepherd of the Valley in San Jose, for the last 13 years, yeah.
Wonderful. So tell our listeners a little bit more about California, and have you lived in other places? How does it compare?
It's been 20-something years since I've lived outside of California. So like I said, I grew up here. I went through high school in San Francisco, and then I went to New York for college. And then after college, I lived in LA for a couple of years, but that was 25 years ago. So more so than the location, times have changed more than anything. So I actually don't even know what it would be like to live in either of those places at this point in time. California itself, it's a mixed bag, as it's probably up in the Northwest. It's interesting.
Yes, there are definitely interesting things about being in the Northwest, to put it diplomatically.
Yeah. So we have the same challenges. I'm guessing that the CNH and the Northwest District are kind of similar. There's outposts of confessional Lutheranism, and then there's the side that are kind of everyone else would be like, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing out there, right?
Yeah.
And so we have that. Our circuit is actually pretty split, which is unusual for the CNH. It's like, I think there's about 14. There were like 14 congregations in our circuit, and it's about 7 and 7 split between confessional and kind of fly by the seat of their pants kind of guys. So
I see,
which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, you've used an acronym a couple of times. CNH. Okay. What is that?
That's the California, Nevada, Hawaii district of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Yeah. So
all right.
And yeah.
So before we drill a little bit more into what it's like being a Lutheran in California, let me ask about your area of California. You said you're in San Jose, right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about the area so far as its good points, things that you think, oh, I love being here because of this.
So the thing I love about this area is the diversity. So obviously diversity comes with a mixed bag of things, and it can mean many things to many people. The diversity that I like is that you always feel like you can find your place somewhere. You don't feel there's enough diversity, or there's always something that you can kind of latch onto somebody in some group, and so you never feel like you're a complete outsider. And at worst, you feel like everybody is an outsider. So you the diversity also brings about for us. Lots of choices in food. So there's a wide variety of cuisine, wide variety of options for cultural activities and things like that. So that's one of the things that we really enjoy about the San Francisco Bay Area. And the other thing that really ties us to the Bay Area is our families. My wife's family's about a 45 minutes, hour away, and so is my dad and my sister. So family is definitely a large reason why we're still around and fight through all the craziness.
Yeah, that's really neat that you have your family there. I want to come back to the question of what it's like to raise a family in a moment, but I want to go to the flip side. We've talked about the good things. What are some of the not so great things about being in your area of California, the Bay Area in general?
Sure. So the probably the biggest drawback is the focus on money and status. I mean, it's the valley is really status and money driven. My wife, for the first 10 years of my daughter's life, she was a stay-at-home mom, and we were basically competing with, I'm an engineer, but we were competing with dual engineer salaries for housing, and so housing prices, so housing prices are insane, and so we live in a nice, modest area of town, and at this point, we probably couldn't afford to live in this area if we hadn't bought a house 15 years ago, right? And it's amazing how hard it is for a young family to get started out here.
Okay,
that's really the tough part, and because of the status and the need to keep up with the Joneses, people really it really detracts from the people raising families even, and like we can talk about that when we talk about families, but it's really hard for families to be together because even the kids, they're trying to make sure that their kids get into a good school, and they're make sure they have all the check boxes, and so they're all doing activities, and they're rarely having meals together, and they're just split all over the place, and so it's really the dark side of the valley.
Yeah, so to sum up, that's the pursuit of status and money that leads to a lot of these problems, and that's hard not to get. I'd imagine it's kind of hard not to get caught up on that yourself. Oh, well, the Joneses are sending Susie to this great soccer camp. Why aren't we? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's really a thing to fight against, and you have to be really intentional about it and really think about what you're getting into. That's one of the problems with that we have at our congregation is like keeping the young families connected to Sunday service, because all the elite soccer clubs and basketball clubs and all the club sports are going on Sunday mornings, and they're on a travel team, they're never around, and so it's it's like just keeping people around and active in the church is you want to check. It doesn't, going to church doesn't check off any check boxes for college.
Yeah, you can't say regular Sunday service attender, unfortunately. All right, so let's go ahead and talk. We've already kind of started to delve into this topic. Let's talk a little bit more about what it's like to raise a family in the Bay Area. What are some of the good things? And if somebody's thinking about moving to the Bay Area for work, there's a lot of tech jobs there. If somebody's thinking about that, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of that family aspect?
I've been thinking about this a little bit, and a new family would really have to have a good plan in place. So it actually came up with a couple families that were at our congregation for a little while, and the one family had a plan. Their plan was they bought a place in Missouri, and their plan was to come out here for 4 years, work at a tech company, save all that money, and then pay off all the land that they bought in Missouri and move back there and not really have to work or decide how much they wanted to work. And they stuck to that plan, and they executed it to a T. The guy worked at Netflix for 4 years, did really well. They moved back since. They paid off all their property in Missouri, and he can choose when he wants to work and who he wants to work for. And I was like, wow, well executed plan. Another family that we had came out here. Another tech guy, he had a great job. Their plan was to come out here and work, save up for a house, and live out here. But then it's just $1.5 million for a house, and it's almost impossible to save up for that down payment for that. The only way that I've seen young people make it or buy a home in the valley is to go to a startup and get options and hit it on options, and then they can afford a house.
I've often heard the joke that you can buy a house in the Bay Area after your second successful exit. So there is something to that then?
You can probably after your first exit you could probably buy like a townhome or something, or like a condo, but you can't buy a house until I mean it is that it's I don't know where you come up with the funds to get that down payment. I mean, it's just really it's insane. And that's talking about family things. And so one of the things we're doing is planning on where trying to figure out where my daughters are going to live after they leave our house, because I can't see how they could afford to live in this area. They have no real interest in tech. They're not going to go to startups. And even if they did, that thing's a lottery, right, at best. And so, how are we going to, what are we going to do for them? My plan is just to be able to become location independent, and then wherever they go, we'll go be near them, and deal with work that way, and be near them, go where they go, instead of having them try to figure out how they're going to survive in the Bay Area.
Yeah, that makes sense. I should give our listeners a little context to what you and I were joking about earlier. So when we talk about startups, an exit is at the point at which a startup does an IPO, or in some way you're able to exercise the equity that you have in the company. And so that's what we were talking about when we were talking about exits. And let's set a little more context. Tell us a little bit more. Tell us about your family. You said you have daughters?
Yeah, my wife and I, we just, on November 2nd, we celebrated our 23rd anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's going to be 18 in April. And then I have a soon-to-be 13-year-old on November 27th. So birthday's coming up real soon. So yeah, one is a senior. My daughter, the older daughter, is a senior. She's doing all the applications and stuff. She really wants she really wants to go to art school. So she has another layer of work to do to get her portfolio together. Mm-hmm. And then my younger daughter is in seventh grade. She's the athletic one. She loves sports. She loves doing taekwondo, and she started doing Spartan racing and stuff like that. So she's the athletic one.
Cool. So tell our listeners a little bit about what your experience as a parent and that you think is obviously, raising kids has it for everyone, no matter where they are, has its joys and sorrows and its ups and downs. But what do you think are some of the things that might be unique to the Bay Area, or things that you've experienced as a parent that perhaps other people that are thinking about the Bay Area should know?
It's going back to the pressure thing. My daughters constantly get asked what they want to be, and what school do they want to go to, and what are they doing to. The sad thing, or the thing I have to hold the line against, is this even happens in the congregation.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
It's really hard. Like you were talking about earlier. How do you keep yourself detached from that? How do you detach yourself from it? And then when it's happening within the congregation, it just feels more difficult.
Absolutely.
My daughter, she's a fine artist, so she likes pen and paper and stuff. And then one, she always gets the thing where congregational members say, "Oh, yeah, I heard you can make a lot of money in digital art, like graphic design." She has no interest in that, and they always, but you could make so much money. And she's just like, "I don't like it," and we go back and forth, and I like, they're well-meaning, but I understand. I'm never going to push you to where you don't want to go, and they just you just go along. Just understand that they're looking out for you, but they're immersed in this valley culture as well, and they see that success, and they want the success for their kids, and so they're kind of seeing how that applies to you as a young person. And so I say, don't worry about it. Don't take it too much to heart.
Yeah, this is a bit of a digression from California, but it's something I've wondered about myself, is how much, and I see it in my congregation, and I've heard about it in other places too, where there's just kind of this default of, what are you going to do for your career, rather than, well, are you thinking about finding a good spouse, or getting married, or having a family? It's a very strange thing that even in the church, we've gotten so wrapped up in the, you get good grades in high school, then you go to a good college, and then you do a career, and then maybe you think about family.
Yeah, and it's very true. And so this year I actually I took over our youth group, mm-hmm. And so they don't want to talk about that stuff. But I force them to, because I try to, I encourage. I ask them, what do you think about doing church work? I ask them about where are you going to go to school, and how are you going to find the church that you're going to go to during school? How are you going to make sure you get up, and all these things that I know they're not thinking about, I worry a little bit that their parents aren't talking enough to them about it. But so I do that at youth group and just make them think about, those kind of things that are not career oriented, and definitely like trying to gear them towards the better things in life. Actually, right there. I mean, I always tell my daughters, like for us, the real joy comes not in my job or anything. It's watching you guys grow up and being in church with you and seeing your faith grow and helping you along those lines. And that's, and then when we're old, what are we going to enjoy? Are we going to enjoy the career that we had, or are we going to enjoy the family? And I'm like, you don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. And I don't think you guys want to be alone when you grow up either. So, make that a priority. Don't make that the last thing you think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's sum up this kind of the family aspect and maybe explore a little more too, if you wish. So if somebody's thinking about coming to the Bay Area, you mentioned having a plan and also being aware that there's this Valley culture that's very focused on status and money and the influence that comes with that, and having a plan also to guard against that and raise your children in that atmosphere. Any other things that you'd say in terms of the family aspect that people should really think about if they're thinking about coming to the Bay Area? Homeschooling or private schooling?
That's I was just about to talk about that, the schooling aspect. So the schooling aspect is it's been a curse and a blessing for us. So my older daughter went to Catholic school, and so we got into the habit of talking about, what the Catholics were teaching and how it differed from what we were teaching and things like that. And so it actually became a positive thing that there was differences. It became a place where we could start conversation and have a back and forth. And and then my other daughter, she goes to a Christian school, like a non-denominational school, and we do the same thing. So, and she's funny because she's actually on autism spectrum, and she really latches onto our theology, and she gets mad when she comes home from school. She's like, they're just telling us that God wants us to be happy, and she's like, no, God wants us to be saved, and she's just like fighting with her teacher. She says she argues with her teacher. It's just hilarious, but so. If you are engaged in their education, it can be a benefit because you will find plenty of opportunities to discuss things with them, because nobody's going to teach. We have very few now. We have very few Lutheran K through 8 schools. A lot of them have closed, like everywhere else, and we've never had a Lutheran high school in the Bay Area. So after K through 8. Typically, they would go to a public school or one of the non-denominational Christian high schools. But the thing about the Bay Area, those Christian high schools, they cost more than what I paid for a college. I mean, they're like 18 to 20 grand a year for. So that's why we're not spending. We didn't go that. So my older daughter goes to a public school, and so that's an interesting bag. I mean. She is just immersed in the the LGBTQIA culture. I mean, everything is pushed on her that of identity and those kinds of things. She's an artist, so she has that group that they're all very liberal leaning, and so very few Christians, and so it's really tough for her sometimes. But she's very knowledgeable and strong in her faith, and so she doesn't like push it out there, but anytime anyone has questions about it, she can respond, and she can at least defend her faith and things like that. So, and then once again, as she faces all these things in college or in high school, it helps me to have a jumping off point to talk to her about what it's going to be like when she goes away to college and she doesn't have me around to ask these things or help her through these things. We have a dialogue now that we can fall back to in case she does have more questions later on. We have established this rapport. Yeah,
that's really good.
So I guess the thing I would say is that if you're going to come out here, you have to be actively engaged in it because everything is fighting against you as a Christian in general.
Yeah. One of the pastors that I interviewed up here in Seattle said that people often just if they're not careful, they just kind of get absorbed into the culture.
Yeah.
And that sounds like is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, very much.
have a plan so that you don't just like go on this like valley default, because you'll end up in, a very worldly and bad place.
Oh yes, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. That's as a summary. That's a perfect summary of what I was thinking.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor. If you're listening to this podcast on a device, you know the power of having audio on the go, whether it's running errands, doing chores. Audible wants to bring the power of audio to you with books. And right now, you can go get a free book through Audible to try out their service. You can go to audibletrial.com/Lutheran Cartographer and check out their wide array of books. I'd recommend checking out Luther's Table Talk. You can get it for free with this trial offer, and you can listen to 7 hours of the wit and wisdom of Martin Luther. But if Table Talk isn't to your taste, you can try something else out. They have a huge audio catalog to choose from. So go to audibletrial.com/Lutheran Cartographer to check out that free trial. Let's transition to more fun things.
Okay.
Let's talk about what are some of the hidden gems that you would recommend that people check out, whether they're restaurants to go to and eat at. You mentioned the diversity earlier. Whether it's cool activities to do. What things would you recommend that people go see to really get a good taste of the Bay Area?
One of the things that, like, if you were, this is kind of a obscure thing, and so maybe not if you were a local or something, had a little bit of time to kill or something, an activity you want to do. We have this place called the Bay Area Glass Institute, and it's a glass blowing place. They have, like right now they're running a glass pumpkin creation class. They'll do a Christmas tree class.
Nice.
It's just like one of the members of our congregation. He's a member, and so he turned us on to it. But it's just a really cool place. It's it's like there's an artistic side of it, so of glass blowing, but there's also it's very scientific. So my daughters span that spectrum, and so they each one likes it for a different reason, and so it's really a lot of fun. They have adult classes, kids classes, and things like that. So that's a lot of fun. That one as an activity, that's a lot of fun. If someone was visiting, what I would say is, obviously, you could go to San Francisco. That's the easy one. But something that's really fun that people might not think about is going to about an hour south of here is the Monterey Peninsula. And so there's the Monterey Bay Aquarium. There's Pebble Beach, the 17-mile drive. There's Cannery Row, where John Steinbeck's home was, and things like that. There's also there's a town called Carmel where Clint Eastwood was the mayor of Carmel for a while. And they have this food tour that my wife and I love to go on, and we go like once or twice a year. And they take you to about 7 places. You get a cocktail and a appetizer or a small portion of a meal, and you just take an afternoon where you just go and hit a bunch of restaurants. And the restaurants change every time. There's a little bit of difference in the variation in the menu, and so going to Monterey and spending a weekend down in Monterey for food and scenery, that's a great place, especially for someone. I think on this food tour, we've actually met a lot of people from the Midwest, and they really like it because it's not as crazy as San Francisco. It's like, oh yeah, we went to San Francisco, and there's all kinds of craziness. There's people, the homeless people are there, and it's a little bit too hectic there. And they're like, oh, this is really nice. It's a little bit more peaceful, a lot more scenic. And so for like, if you're coming out from the Midwest, like Monterey Bay, I think it'd be a better introduction to California. And it's actually much nicer looking than San Francisco.
Nice. So it's not like you're being thrown in the deep end. You get to experience kind of those nicer aspects without having to dodge all the things that come with San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good deal. Other things, places that are local maybe to you that you'd recommend eating at.
There's a local Italian place called Sorrel's that we go to. We always go that's my favorite, so we go there for my birthday. There's a Indian place called Royal Taj that we always go to, and that's about a mile and a half from our house. It's funny because these gentlemen that run the restaurant are like they're basically nonverbal. They when you ordering off the menu, you like, I'd like this, and they go, and And I like this. And then that's about all. And then that's all the communication you get from them basically. And then they bring your food. They're very quiet. They just hand it to you. And honestly, about 10 to 12 words is all that they speak to you the whole time you're there. But the food is fantastic. You definitely don't go there for the ambiance. And actually, the funny thing is when we go there, we're there for about an hour and something. There's usually about 20 takeout orders, and there's like 2 people in the restaurant because nobody goes there for the service.
Yeah. So if you're having a day when you don't feel like talking to anyone, go there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Any other places or activities you'd like to share?
Down in the San Jose Bay Area, or San Jose area, there's a ton of hiking trails and things. So if you like to get out, there's just too many to name. One of the prettier ones is up by Stanford. So there's a loop, and you can go around and see one. They're SETI telescopes. They're on a hill, and so you can take a walk around and see the SETI telescopes up there. There's also a couple county parks that are really nice. My daughter knows those because she does her Spartan training on the hill trails there. So. There's definitely a lot of trails and places to run and hike.
Great. So now I want to ask you a more specific question about the field that you're in.
Okay.
And that is, if somebody's considering coming to the Bay Area, it's pretty likely that they work in tech or are an engineer or QA or are in some way involved with that area of life. Is there any specific advice you'd give for those people in terms of things to watch out for in the Bay Area?
I would be concerned with hours. There's certain, depending on the culture of the company that you're going to, the amount of hours that they can impose on you can be really difficult on your family, you and your family, if you have a family, or if even if you're trying to get to church. I know some guys have trouble even getting to their a regular Sunday service because they'll.
Really?
Yeah. They're depending on they can be on call. Some depending on what startup you're at, you could be on call. I know some guys that had to work on weekends or because a customer issue had the system down, and so they have to work through the weekends. For me, the thing that since I've had enough experience out here, and I have a manager that I've worked with for about 12, 15 years, and he knows, that we go to church and we have family obligations and things like that. So he's very accommodating to those things. But I guess you would, as a tech worker, I would say, have this conversation with your potential employers beforehand and really get to understand what the culture is and what the expectations are you in terms of your time. It can be pretty brutal. The other thing I would say is just be aware of the startup thing. It sounds glamorous. And I've been at my fair share, and it's not glamorous. It's just it's actually ugly and really unlikely that you'll know enough. I know enough people that have been at the Facebooks and Googles and stuff and made plenty of money. But I know enough guys that have missed on things and have just nearly burnt out their life. Chasing startups and things like that, and it can be a rough life because you are getting paid less than your market value, and in the hopes of a big payout, and it's pretty rare that payout is pretty rare.
So don't come to Silicon Valley and expect to happen to work for the next Google kind of thing.
It's definitely the gold, be wary of the gold rush mentality that you're going to, like plenty of miners, they went broke. The guys that selling the tools and the mining equipment made the money, not the guys who were mining, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to freeze to death in the Yukon or something like that. Although I suppose not much risk of that in San Francisco. Speaking of, I kind of want to transition to talking about some of the stereotypes. Oftentimes they are based in some truth, and I'd like to just throw some at you and then get your response of however long you'd like to take. If you just want to say a quick, no, that's not true, or yes, it is true, and here's why, however much you'd like to do with it.
Just as a preface, I'm gonna bet that the stereotypes are actually gonna be largely true. It's sadly, usually, right? People go, "Oh, those are stereotypes and they're not true." But I'm gonna I'm gonna go for the. I bet you're gonna see stereotypes, and I'm gonna mostly say they're true because it is that crazy. I think it is as crazy as people think.
Okay. All right. Well, that's an interesting start. So, first one, the weather is always wonderful.
In San Jose, it is largely really nice. There's probably a couple weeks of the year where it drops below. It gets in the 30s, like high 30s, and that's like the low end of things. It rarely snows, and it maybe dusts the hills or something, but most of the year it's in the mid 70s. Our pastor, who's from Michigan, hates it because there are no seasons. We have zero seasons. A rainy spell would be 3 weeks of not seeing the sun, or dark. It is typically especially in the San Jose area, it's nice. The one thing I would caveat is. I grew up in San Francisco, and it's the most hilarious thing because it really is during the summer like super cold. It is like in the 40s and 50s at night in San Francisco. In high school I worked at a sweatshirt shop on Pier 39, and we made so much money because the tourists are in their shorts and their tank tops, and it's like freezing at night because it's just this San Francisco. The actual San Francisco proper is not the warmest place. It's.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next one, housing is crazy expensive.
That is absolutely true. Like I said, our run of the mill, we're probably in one of the most affordable neighborhoods in the valley, actually, and we have a 3.2. It's nothing special. It's estimated. Zillow has it at 1.3 million. It's got nothing. I mean, it's a nice home, but it's like just very, 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 very average. And and the thing is that 3.2, if we were renting it, we would rent it at about $4,000 a month. And then so that's just a home. I go into San Francisco every once in a while. I go to like the Amazon loft because they have like some workspace to do, to get training for Amazon stuff. And it's right next to Twitter and it's right next to Uber. And there was a flyer for an apartment complex that had gone up right next to Uber. 750 square foot, studios, $37.50 a month.
Oh, wow. And I thought Seattle prices were terrible.
And the thing is, and if I don't know if this is the stereotype you're going to go with, but right next to that, there's like a gang of homeless people that are just sitting outside of that apartment complex. I mean, the income disparity is real and very prevalent throughout San Francisco, especially in those. It's really it really is. You can see the stark distinction, when you're going around, especially right around the Uber, Twitter, and Amazon buildings. There's just like there's a homeless camp and there's $4,000 a month studios. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Wow. All right, so we've covered the homeless one then. So you'd say that is a true stereotype then, that there's a lot of.
That is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And next one, the area is extremely politically correct.
I would go beyond politically correct. I mean, it is as left leaning as you could imagine that it is.
So it's not really left leaning; it just is left.
It's just left. Yeah, it is left. It is because and that is just the environment and the stew that we live in Silicon Valley. I mean, like I always tell my like. Every year we go through the sexual harassment training stuff and things like that. And this was, before I signed my offer letter, I had to go through some training where I had to, declare my pronouns and make sure that if someone declares their pronouns to you, you use those pronouns. And yeah, all the things that any stereotypical Midwesterner or anyone else, any conservative stereotype that you could think of about liberals, we have that here. I mean, it is here.
I see. So let's digress on that just a little bit.
Sure.
How would you recommend somebody coming into the Bay Area deal with that, or how do you deal with that?
That's a really good question. So, well, the pronoun thing, I go about it by using people's first name. I mean, I'll tell you really the funniest story is that so we have lots of it's like I said, there's lots of diversity and there's lots of Chinese people people from China, and the interesting thing about the language is they have no pronouns. So this lady that I've known for 20 years, and we worked at various companies together. She mixes pronouns up all the time. So she's calling a he, a she, and she doesn't. And it's the most hilarious thing. She's calling him a her, and she like. And it's I laugh so much, and I'm like, well, all I have to do is say she could never get in trouble for using the wrong pronouns because she's like just mixing them up randomly. I'm like, well, maybe I'll try that. I guess the advice I would give is to and the way I practice it is I don't bow to the culture. But I don't. It would be really difficult to try to fight against it. I mean, you are really swimming against the tide if you try to fight the things. And even doing things like, part of this thing that scares me or concerns me, and I'm trying to get better at it. But even doing, podcasts or writing blog posts, because I used to blog for Brothers of John Steadfast, and even if someone could do a search and see your name associated with LCMS, it could sponsor. I worry about getting Brendan Eicht, where you just because you're associated with something, people will call for your dismissal.
Yeah,
I can feel that could be actually become an actual issue, and so I hope it doesn't. But I'm like I said, we're kind of setting ourselves up, and so I'm. Setting ourselves up to move to wherever our daughters go. So I'm getting less and less hesitant to be understood for what I stand for. I don't hide it as much as I used to, because look, if I can't bow to this culture too much, but because it is getting worse. I mean, the demands on you to bow to the pronoun police and all those kind of things it just gets tighter and tighter all the time. And so
it gets exhausting too.
Yeah.
Like every time I'm on Twitter, I think, oh, wait a minute, should I really respond to this? And it's not a fun place to be.
Yeah, very true, very true. And that's like that. My day-to-day life sometimes feels that way, and it's just it's exhausting.
All right. So as we start to close out the podcast, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to tell our listeners about places they can follow you, links that you'd want to plug. What are some ways that our listeners can follow you if they wish?
My daughter and I haven't really done a whole lot with it. We've recorded about 7 episodes, but my daughter and I have a podcast together where we discuss all these issues, actually. And I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish with it. Maybe help other people figure out ways that their teens and parents can talk to each other about their faith and issues that come up with their faith. But it's called workinprogresspodcast.org. We've done episodes on LGBTQ. We actually did one on the National Youth Gathering. We do stuff on Sunday school and all kinds of different topics that come up between a father and a daughter trying to figure all this stuff out.
Nice. I think Pastor Fisk retweeted your one about the National Youth Gathering, right?
And my daughter was on with him too. Yeah, she talked to him about that stuff.
All right, so I'll be sure to link that in the show notes page. Anything else that you'd like to promote?
No, that's I don't like I said, I've been trying to be, or I've been largely under the radar, but trying to not really out there yet. But I with Pastor Fisk, I do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes with him and Pastor Wolfmueller. I help edit stuff and things like that. So just follow them, and that makes me happy because I do a bunch of stuff for them.
Nice. I didn't know that. Thank you very much for doing that. That's really cool. So I want to make sure to mention, you said you go to Shepherd the Valley. You'd invite people, if they're in the Bay Area, to visit your church as well?
Yeah, please come. It's in the south part of San Jose, so it's the Almaden Valley, San Jose. I will be completely forthright. We're kind of an interesting congregation in that we go straight out of the hymnal, but we also once or twice a month we have it's not a blended service. It's really weird. We go back and forth about this. It does all the propers, but it uses contemporary songs. It's just an interesting mix. And so someone who is strictly liturgical would probably freak out, but it's and even I, as someone who's gone through this for a long time. I'm an elder too. The songs, the songs depress me because they really aren't good. But the musicians, and the thing is, like, our friends are in the praise team, and they're really good musicians, and they do the best that they can with the songs. But just the genre itself is just does not lend itself to good music.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you so much for your time today. Any parting thoughts for our listeners about the Bay Area or just about Lutheranism and life in general?
So my one big kick that I've been on is just be really intentional with your kids. They will not grow up in the faith unless you as a parent are intentional. I've seen it so much with the kids that have gone to confirmation in my generation and at our congregation. If the parents weren't intentional about making sure that the kids stay in the faith, their default is to drift away. And so if you want, and I'm assuming you want to see your children in the new heavens and the new earth, please make sure that you are very intentional about keeping them in church and keeping them in the Word. That's my plug.
All right, that is a wonderful closing thought. Thank you again, and God's peace.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lutheran Cartographer. For more information about the things we talked about today, check out the show notes page at lutherancartographer.com/4. If you'd like to check out that trial offer iAudible, again, that's available at audibletrial.com/lutherancartographer. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm on Twitter at NWCartography. I'm Nicholas Weber. I'll speak to you soon.